You're listening to Radio Primavera Sound, proudly presented by Cupra.
Welcome to Line Noise, and our guest this week is Maara-Louisa Dunbar, aka Maara, who is a Montreal producer and DJ whose brilliant new album, Ultravillain, is released by NAFF. NAFF, just in case you're wondering. So we talked about that. We talked about being a villain, and we talked about narrative in albums, the ability to be misunderstood. And we talked about what the hell home means, as well as Madonna, trip hop, and more. And it was a very open-hearted interview. I really enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoy it too. And remember, Line Noise comes to you with the support of Cupra. Right, Maara-Louisa Dunbar, how are you doing? Welcome to...
Good.
Good?
Good, yes. I'm in Montreal. It's a nice, sunny, snowy day, and enjoying the winter period for sure.
Congratulations on the new album, Ultravillain.
Thank you.
You said on Instagram, never did I expect to be releasing an album like this. What did you mean by that?
I did say that. A lot of these tracks I feel like I made for myself and not ever with really the intention of sharing them. And kind of how the album came together is I was actually working with Francis, Priori, and getting him to mix down some songs last winter. And when we were working together, he's like, "What are you trying to do with these songs?" I was like, "Oh, just like an EP on my label or something." And he's like, "No, I want them, let's do an album." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I was like, "Okay, well, I have these songs, and I have this song." And I was like, "Oh, I'll show you this." And I was literally just showing him some songs I had in my Ableton that were way more vocally oriented. And he actually really was like, "I fuck with this." And sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and really encouraged me to put them out. So here we are.
So it's interesting you said that, because I have a theory. This might be entirely wrong, but having listened to quite a lot of your music, it seems to me like your albums are very different from your 12 inches. If you listen to something like Revenge from the Penthouse or Big Whoops, two EPs, very different, kind of dance floory, 4/4, that kind of thing. And two albums like Age and Truth and Ultravillain are very different. Is that something you consciously do, or do I have it completely wrong?
No, you're not wrong. This has definitely kind of been the case. I think it comes down to a few things. Well, I think the Ancient Truth album, I think, informed a lot of my other, even dance releases, just because of scheduling and stuff like that. But I make a lot of music, and I make a lot of different types of music. And usually, when I, come out for air and, start thinking about organizing a release, it's I'll literally have 15 to 20 down-tempo songs. And I guess it's about kind of organizing that and thinking a bit more strategically in larger bodies of work when I have that much music, versus it feels a bit rushed, or I don't want to say cheap, but maybe to put out an EP of 4 tracks that are down tempo, when I think I have a larger body of work that could be shaped and molded into maybe a larger narrative, would kind of, it lends itself more, I think, longer, an LP, to explore these themes and different slower sounds, where I think when you just do a 4-track dance EP, it's easy to just do here you go, if that answers the question. Yeah.
Well, it does. Narrative is something I definitely want to get into later. I wonder if that's the same when you're listening to music. Do you sort of tend to go for different things? Do you have different moments? You're right, I'm putting on this EP, and you're after some sort of, dance thrills, and then you're like, okay, but I want this album to, to give me a narrative or to give me a story?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think I categorize things in like two, I think, big spheres. I think one is the dance music I want to dig for and the dance music I want to hear out when I party. And, sometimes I listen to mixes at home and like we'll put on a dance song, to get in the mood. But then I think there's like then the different type of music in my mind, which is like the music I actually want to listen to, like outside of like the industry and outside of the ecosystem of nightlife. And for me, that's really important. And like that speaks to me a lot. And it's important to make like not dance floor music, because I think so much of my life is defined by like not clubbing or like not that scene. So I think, yeah, I guess I listen to a lot of different types of music outside of, what I do DJ wise.
In the album, you sing "I'm the Ultra Villain." Because
Yes.
I was wondering to myself, like I was thinking to the title, Ultra Villain. Who's the Ultra Villain? Then you sing "I'm the Ultra Villain." What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, to start off, I guess on a more abstract note, I think the reason I called it Ultra Villain was like I was going through a lot of like personal changes in my relationships and friendships, and I guess it just clicked with me that no matter what I did with certain people, I was never going to be like, considered a friend or thought of in a certain way. And I think it was about kind of like embracing like, people can think what they want of you and make you out to be a certain type of way, but there's like a lot of power in like being okay with that and like being like, okay, I can lean into this like narrative of me if you want me to, and like I'm not like afraid of that anymore, or like I'm not scared to like have other people like think I'm like the bad guy or whatever. And because it's like I'm connected to like my own motives and truth. And it's like I think, a learning lesson for me is, I grow as a person that you cannot always control what people think or say. So I guess to answer your question, I think it's really about like, that was specifically a reference to a situation where I just felt a bit like, it was something was being made out to be this thing. And I was like, I am your ultra villain.
I mean, it's interesting because you described the album, sorry, this is quite a long quote. You described the album as a story about coming back to myself after a long journey of desperately wishing things or people to be the answer to my pain. Is making music quite cathartic for you?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think it keeps me like engaged with the process, because especially when it comes to lyrics and like storytelling, there's something that I think just like music can capture, that the way you can tell a story can in ways that maybe you'll never get to in like your real life, in terms of like resolution or like having like situations feel like there's a closure. And I think like through art, you can get closure like via yourself through like your process. Whereas I think a lot of times in life, sometimes you will never get those final moments or something. And it's making music for me is like a huge part of like my mental health, and it feels like a sonic journal. It's something I really do for myself, and I try to remember that I do it because I love it, and it's not even to share or like not even to always publish what I do, but it's about the practice and the process. And
how do you think you learned something about yourself when making the album?
Yes. Like, I mean, I think on like many different, I guess there's like, I guess more the technical side and then the emotional sphere. I mean, I think on the technical side, I think, with some of the songs, there's like a lot of collaboration with like Francis and Pat, especially on like the vocal harmonies of it. Like, for example, NV0, there was like, Pat really pushed me to like hit certain notes with the bass and like have this like vocal like mapping and like redoing things. So there's like the technical, I guess, aspects. And then I think for me, yeah, like I guess the album does mark a big shift in like my own personal growth, where I feel like I'm like saying bye or letting go to a lot of these like unhelpful like tendencies I've had, and like coming more into myself like as a person, and like having that confidence of like, yeah, and not seeking anything like externally. Yeah. And yeah, that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. You've talked to the album as a narrative record. I mean, slightly oversimplifying, but what is the sort of basic narrative of the album?
And I guess this is not a linear answer to, I guess, because I think narrative implies like beginning, middle, ending, right? In my mind, I mean, an arc. I guess it's about someone who's like searching for something, for the meaning of life or whatever, and takes solstice, and it's not even I'm saying that right. Solace in relationships and desires outside of themselves. And I think the final, so there's this long journey through that, and also that abstractly, and like I think some of the sounds that are in the album and like kind of the darker moments of it, like on Dangerous Games and Kiss the Ring, and like there's kind of more like darkness to it and like trippiness to it. And then there's also like the vocal element, which I guess is more the literal story element to it. And through like heartbreak and like obsessiveness. And then I think the final track is like Come Home. And I think for me, that one really means returning to like yourself, and like also like but also not really knowing if like home is ever like really a place. Like, yeah, just like, what does it even mean to like come home? Or like maybe you don't know what you're returning to, but you can always like go back to yourself.
And I find with Come Home, I mean, for me, it feels like things end on quite a positive note. Is that right?
It's like, yes, to a degree. I think for me, it's kind of like a sad note too, or like an acceptance, an acceptance. I think I wrote that song when I played live for MUTEC in Montreal in like I want to say it was 2024. Yeah, 2024. And it was the last song I put in like my live set. And it kind of felt like a full circle moment for me, because I'd been gone so much from like Montreal, and I think to come back in like my city and like play a live set and like have so many shifts like and like happen within my life, and like felt like to build up to this moment of like coming home, but like also being like, a lot of like people I was in relationships with aren't here right now, or like a lot of things have changed too. But it's also like okay, and like this like soft embrace of like just returning to at least an inner state of calm, maybe.
That's what I find interesting though. I mean, maybe it's hard to answer. Is that what home is to you, like, and in a state of calm?
I think home is, a mentality to some degree where it's like you can choose to, be comforted in like the things you do have and like the connections you do have, and like remember that like you love and you are loved, and like, you can be anywhere in the world and like still, like remember that like you are connected to other people. And like, I think also with touring and traveling a lot, there can be that creeping, loneliness that creeps in, and isolation that happens. So I think like remembering that like home can exist within yourself is pretty important.
Because on an actual physical level, you live between Montreal and Berlin, is that right?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, I travel a lot, and I kind of have been trying to split my year between Montreal and then Berlin in the summers and whatnot. There's lots of back and forth. Yes, and lately it's been a lot of living out the suitcase. So,
are they very different cities? I don't know either of them particularly well.
Yes, very different. Montreal is kind of like the Europe of North America, It's very like culturally ahead, and like I think the music scene is like world class and really good. And there's always like a spirit of like DIY-ness and undergroundness. And it's like, but at the same time, it's not like overly saturated. Whereas Berlin, I think there are a lot of expats who are kind of just doing the same thing I'm doing, I guess, just being a DJ and living in Berlin. And it's a darker place. Like, I also just like the climate of it, and like Germany, and just, they like to follow rules there, and just the culture is so like different. And also I think a lot of people in Berlin move there because they love partying and like love going to the club. I don't feel that way and don't really relate to it as much. And I'm always like, I now I do actually want to leave, but the question is, where do I go?
Musically, the new album sounds absolutely fantastic. For me, I know it doesn't exactly, obviously it doesn't sound exactly like this, but it reminds me of, I don't know how you'll feel about this, but it kind of reminded me a lot of like Madonna in the 90s, which for me is a really good thing. I love that. I love that kind of thing. Kind of.
Yeah.
Were there any particular reference points you had when you were doing the album?
Yeah, that's fun. I do love like Madonna of the 90s. So good. Yeah, like there were a few, like obviously Coil and Golden, the darker Golden Palomino, Palominos, like the Star Seeds, like a bit more kind of like down tempo-y stuff that was intentional. And then some of it not so much intentionally at all, like, like the song Envy Zero or like I'm the One You Want were more random and feel like almost pop adjacent to me, which is not, I guess, comes back to the first thing you said, which was, I wasn't expecting to be putting out something that's like related to pop music to me. Maybe that's a little bit generous, but you know what I mean, I guess.
Well, it's like, I mean, I love pop music and I love dance music. And for me, it just strikes me as like a really good example of like underground dance pop, which sounds like the, horrendous label to give it, but you know what I mean. Hopefully.
Yeah. Alt pop, I think.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's a better name. I mean, some people have said trip hop. I don't know how you feel about that term. I'm a lot older than you, and I remember the sort of golden age of trip hop. I enjoyed it a great deal. But what do you think of that of trip hop? I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's a fair label. I understand why that there's that the inclination, and it makes sense. Like considering, I think what people think of as trip hop. Like, definitely think that in some of the songs, like Burn Up is like, for me, I guess, a trip hop. But then there are other songs on the album that more feel like almost more like slow electro, or like have different reference points or something. But it doesn't bother me the word trip hop, but it has become a bit of a buzzword.
I mean, this is such a personal record. How do you feel about it coming out into the world? Do you feel nervous?
Yeah. It goes through ebbs and flows. I like to not think about things too much. Like, I like to literally just block everything out. And I think when I finished the album, I went through phases of, sometimes I'd listen to it and I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm putting this out. This is so fucked. Like, oh God, like, this is, like, I don't know. But then I also have to remember that I think that's a good feeling to have about your work. I think if you're not taking risks, you wouldn't feel that way. And, that's boring. Even with like my last album, I remember the day I posted about it, I was like, oh my God, is this like career suicide? Like, what if I was like, gaslit into thinking like all this shit was good, and then it's like actually all really bad, and like, oh no. But so I think the second time around with this album, I'm just like, it is what it is. And like, I think it's good to take risks, and, someone's gotta, so here we are.
No, it's a great album. It's a great album. It's a kind of an album that really works well in one sitting. I mean, but it's because, I suppose, of the narrative, because of the journey. How do you feel knowing that, some people will obviously listen to it as an album. Some people will just be like, this track, my playlist now.
Yeah.
Does it kill you, or is it just like, whatever?
No, I think that I'm okay with the state of the listening culture. I think it's a double-edged sword, where I think because of like the prevalence of music streaming platforms, there is the fragmentation of how people listen to things. However, I think also that the popularity of platforms also gives people the opportunity to do full listening if they want to. And I would like to think that there are like music heads out there that still like want to consume music in this way. Maybe that's naive of me, or like silly, but I'd like to think that like the culture that's there that matters, and like the people who want to listen can, and like, that's what's important. And I think, I think it takes time, maybe it won't be immediate, but maybe, in a few years, people will listen to the full thing, but.
Do you think people will get the same thing out from it that you did making it, that kind of journey towards self-acceptance, I suppose I want to say, and knowing that other people can misunderstand you and that's okay, and it's all right to be misunderstood?
Maybe not. I'm not sure. I think that, yeah, it's so subjective. I think the way we interpret music and the way it speaks to us, I know from my own experience with music, it's like some songs really speak to me about certain things, but whether that was intentional or not on the artist, or whether or not the artist saw the music they made in a different way, I think is subject to different interpretations. So I think that maybe not, but I hope that, people are soothed by it or, enjoy it and can take away some meaning from it, but yeah, I'm not necessarily sure that all the references I am putting down or alluding to or like that will necessarily, they're not so obvious. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, look, it's been great to speak to you today. I would encourage anyone to check out the album Ultravillain, which is out February the 5th. Are you playing live? Are you going to be playing live to support it?
Yeah, I think I will be. We're doing some scheduling right now, so I think that will be a really fun journey.
Cool. Well, if you come to Barcelona, I will be there, and I'll definitely enjoy it. Congratulations!
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to Radio Primavera Sound, proudly presented by Cupra.